Good morning, everybody. How are we doing? This is Jeremiah. We are going to have another amazing webinar, our little Ask Us Anything style. All of your questions are valid. We really want to get to those things that we haven't thought of that are, random little issues that you're having that you're too afraid to ask. This is the time to ask. And we're spotlighting on details. I have such an affinity for the detail system. My dad and I, as we were building it, we would say all the time, it's just too bad that details aren't very sexy. We would say this all the time. It doesn't have that punch of like a whole sheet of plant call outs getting updated, or generating the schedule with all the irrigation equipment and the pipe sizing, these other things we're working on, people like, wow. And with details, it was just like, look, it keeps track of all your details. And it didn't quite have that punch, but because I started, that was the first thing I did in my dad's office when I was about 12 years old, is I would assemble the detail sheets. And so he had a filing cabinet with all the transparencies of the details, and I'd make a photocopy of them and then assemble them onto the sheets and then make a blueprint of that. And that was the very first thing I did in his office. And when we built the detail system, we just basically, it's an electronic version of that. You have a filing system where all your details are organized, and you place them onto a sheet, and there you go. And then you call them out and things, right? And so it always was just very simple. But over the years, guess what? We've been able to add some sexy features. So we're going to show you a little bit of it. But again, the spotlight of this webinar is we really want the interaction. We can record a training video in our sound studio and just put it on the website. But we want the interaction. We want to know the issues you're having and to be able to answer them here live. We're really hoping that you have plenty of detailed questions. Where do you enter those questions? That's that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. You can click that right now. That's where you can type in all of your little questions and we will get to them. But Amanda does have some things prepared to, of course, bide the time in between questions and maybe even spur some questions in your mind. With that being said, I'm going to get this handed over to Amanda to joggle everyone's questioning minds on details.
Sounds great. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here, getting to talk to detail junkies like me. I think the kind of person who likes a well done detail is the kind of person who also likes things done right the first time. So that's kind of what it's all about, right? And I am Amanda Marin, and I'm here with Jer Farmer, who you just heard with, our CEO and original detail guru, I feel. So whether you've been using land effects or design effects detail tools for years, or you're just trying to figure out if there's something you should be using, you are in the right place. So I am excited that Jer and I get to be able to answer all of your burning detail questions today. I do have, like he said, a few things lined up that are either new or I think would be great advanced detail topics. We're going to cover a few first, and just to give you guys time to type all of your questions into the Q&A box, and then we'll focus on those questions. And we'll wrap up the end with a discussion about the future of the design FX tools. And you will find that a lot of the things we are going to talk about are actually prepping for our future ideas there. So just a little thing to keep you till the end. First slide is for those thinking, is this for me and my office? The short answer is yes. These tools will save you and your team days or weeks of time on a single project. I am not over exaggerating that. and it will dramatically reduce errors, like pulling the wrong version of a detail. It will make your life easier in terms of updating details to fix any errors in old details and making sure that everybody is using the right version. It will also make it a lot easier for you to communicate to your team which detail to use, for them to find that detail, all of that. Very, very easy, very visual, completely catered with landscape architects in mind. And you can see the ribbon at the top up there with the lineup of tools that are in here. So the next thing I want to go over is all of the detail updates that we had in 2024, and we had quite a few. I've bolded some of the more important kind of small tweaks and changes that we've been doing um, to the capabilities of the details. Again, a lot of them are actually prepping for some future updates. And then that's about all I wanted to cover on slides, and I wanted to go straight into the software and start showing you some of those new things that were in that list. So let's go ahead and hop on over into this sheet. So the very first thing I wanted to show was the new detail trainer. Now, this came out last fall, but I do know a lot of people haven't had a chance to realize it exists yet. We have been trying to shout this from the rooftops, but if you go and drop down help in any of our ribbons, you can go over to trainer, and you see there in the flyout that you can also type land effects, all one word, no slash, into the command line to access this as well. So if I open up that trainer, I get this great trainer dialog, and I have this trainer set of detail videos. In here, it is a quick start guide to learning all the nitty-gritty of all the tools in our FX Details ribbon. They are short videos. We try and keep them under 2 minutes in here, ideally even a minute or less. And they are very specific, straight to the point, easy to follow along. Honestly, you could get this done in an afternoon. And as you go through any of these videos and get to the end, you get a little super dude here to help you actually accomplish that task. And if you don't do this task, so he's saying click the templates button from the FX Details ribbon and place a detail template. If you don't actually do this task, you can keep this up and you can go off and you can actually use that tool over in here. If you don't do it though and click verify, he gets very sad. So this is just a way where you can then go in and say you do that and you verify it and you get fireworks. I'm not going to show you. I'm going to let you discover that on your own and see how it crosses it off the list and keeps track. So this is great for, I would say, even existing detail users, even if you've been using it for years. I think this would be a really great refresher for you to probably learn some things you didn't realize. You've just been going in your groove. And also, now that you know how it works, you can more reliably hand it off to any new hires in your office to have them go through here, and you'll be able to actually check that they did the things in it and gain some confidence that they are going to treat your details setup, just treat it right and not do too many errors that could break it. And I also, while I'm here, just wanted to point out this new CAD training one. So do go off and explore that. Also, again, great for new hires who need to learn the basics of AutoCAD in general. So that is the new trainer. And then there are a few really cool new features in here. I'm just going to jump over to here where I've added a few details onto a sheet. The biggest thing, that you might not realize, and I actually just spoke to one person, one office in Canada that had not realized we had done this about a year ago. We updated all of our general details, our default detail library, to now allow metric versions. And basically, if I go into new in this project in my detail manager, the details that I am seeing in here are only metric ones. And the way that we have differentiated them is that they start at the 500 level for all of these detail numbers. So if I preview these, all of these are actually metric, and I was involved in helping develop these, knowing that we did not want to uh, do a true scaling from imperial to metric, that it is better to have it as more of a nominal scaling in metric as well, because nobody builds a curb to 154 millimeters wide. They're going to do it to 150. So all you will find now all of these in here available for you to use. And this also sets your office up for an opportunity to use the exact same detail library for both metric and imperial projects if you are in the kind of firm that needs to do that, has a lot of in the US jobs and more international from the US jobs as well. That's one way that you can now organize all of this. And you guys probably already know that you can copy any of these details into a project detail folder. We'll talk a little bit about that if we have some time, on my recommendations on how to organize details, if you guys like. I'm going to hit done and look at the next big thing that we've implemented, which is multi-place. So up here in your detail preferences, if I open that up, we have these new settings in here. And we definitely want to get your feedback on them. This is our first little dive into this. This is only a few months old. It's brand new in here. You can decide when the system automatically places details on the sheet for you. That's what we're doing here. What direction is it going on the sheet? Either starting at the top right and going down, or going across, or starting at the bottom right and going up. If you have a standard other than these, please let us know. These are the ones that we have seen. I do already know, I've talked to somebody who actually starts at the top and then goes down, top right and goes down. So that's, I think, one that we will be implementing soon. And then you can choose between 1, 2, 3, or ABC, just basics. So once you have set those up, you can go and grab the first one and shift and click. And you can also use control to click a few that are unplaced details. And then you can go to place. And it is going to place all of those on the sheet, including one that happened, the first one happened to be a double high detail. So it's accounting for that as well. How cool and slick is that? We were really, really excited to be testing this out and finally be able to release it. So all of these are now on this sheet and placed on that number of the sheet. I've already gone through and done all the detail sheet setup. But if you have any questions about that detail sheet setup, that would be a good one to put into the Q&A, and we can dive into that a little bit more. The last thing that I want to kind of point out is that we are starting to roll out a new detail template. So if I go to, I'm going to go into my Detail Explorer, and I'm going to find a detail that I know I've done this with. Oh, I'm in metric, obviously. So I'm going to go to my Detail Explorer while in an Imperial file. There we go. And there we go. So I can now see I should have the 2024 RE. Oh, I made it in the other one. Okay. I'm gonna grab this and say new, and I'm just gonna call this 2024. I was doing some setup and then I switched virtual machines and I just realized I did that setup over here. Um, so if I'm gonna go actually and exit and go into a new drawing instead to show this off. New. I am going to go browse templates and I'm going to grab my inches and open that one up and then go into the model space. Okay. If I'm in here and I'm going to go over to my graphics and grab an elevation graphic and let's say some site furnishings and some benches. And I'm just going to grab this bench right here. These are some of the new blocks that we have put in for elevation graphics that are really cool. Uh, we'll be talking about our plans for continuing that later, but I've got the side views as well. Like that. And then let's go ahead and set a template. I'm going to do a 2 wide and I'm just going to make a guess at the scale. That looks good. Do we want to make it a little bit smaller? Yeah, a little bit smaller right there. Bam. Okay. So one thing to notice here, this is a little bit different. If you see these ticks at the top, that means you have the new detail template block. And that's a good thing. It's also okay if you have the old one. The system is just going to continue using it as if nothing has changed. Just be aware of this we're going to talk about this a little bit more with the future stuff that we have planned, but this change is critical for that future implementation that we're going to do. So keep that in mind as time goes on. If you see that, do not be afraid of it. It will just work. So those are some of the new things that I wanted to point out right away. Let's see if we can maybe hit some of those questions and go through them. I see some questions rolling in.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got some great questions already. So one person is asking about Revit. Maybe we'll get to that Revit one a little later. Another one very similar to what you're showing right now is that detail file attribute. Used to be when you would save the detail that would update to the saved detail number. And
Yes.
we did have to change that. You can still double click on it. You should be able to double click on it after saving it. I think I can't remember.
Oh,
No, maybe
after
not.
saving it, I haven't saved
After
this
saving.
detail yet.
Yeah, but so
So
just visually, we were so basically it was the reason why what it used to be is it would be an attribute and it would change the tag, and by changing the tag of the attribute, it would there, instead of saying detail file, it would say the detail number of the detail that it had been saved as. And yes, agreed, that was a great little visual indicator that the detail had been saved. But what we found in multiple issues actually with it at the same time. In one instance, if you purge that text style right before saving the detail, it would just disappear when you try to change the tag. Seemingly, I guess it's an AutoCAD bug. I'm not quite sure. But anyway, we had a user going, oh, the detail file is just simply disappearing. So you can see, so what we found is that was only when changing the tag. So what I found is, well, instead of changing the tag, I can change the default value. And that didn't make it disappear. I mean, stone cold AutoCAD bug, right? If I change the tag, it disappears. If I change the default value, it's still there. I don't know, right? So anyway, so we did have to move it there. So yeah, you do have to double click on it. It's a little unfortunate, but as Amanda's kind of mentioning, as we're going to show more, we're in the process of of offering an improved detail system where that entire template file is only added when you place the detail. So it's just ripping that whole template out, giving you the ability to update your template and have it impact every single detail. You can make this the most minor of change to your template, and it'll automatically be migrated to every single detail, which is obviously a huge, 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 awesome thing. Far outstrips this minor little quirk with the sort of now legacy method of details. So I hope that answers the question. I don't know if you have more to add to that, Amanda.
No, that definitely leads us into kind of talking about the dream of where we want to go with all of this. If I go over here, I'm just going to grab and just to kind of wrap that question up and show you guys, if I go into here and grab that guy and place him, that's the one that I saved before. There we go. It does fill in right here. I'm gonna go and delete that guy. Yes, there we go. It does save in here just like that, and show. Any other questions that we should hit first?
Um, y- um, here's, I mean, this one's a good question. This one's good, kind of address. It's kind of need a little more information, but we can sort of generally address it. Um, and anyway, asks a question about detail sharing. Is the only way to share details to do the export and import from the Detail Explorer? And they also ask, does backing up the LFX files also back up details? Or maybe should I back up details and land effects separately? So, kind of, we got a lot of questions in one question. A short answer. So the export and import buttons there in the Detail Explorer are basically the safest method to move a section of your detail library to another Land Effects installation. Um, and even though it will overwrite anything of the exact same number and category and name. Um,
Mhm.
but it is safest in that because compared to really the other method would be basically manually done. Now the majority of the detail library can just simply be manually backed up. Um, Actually, the whole extensive detail library. So you can grab the entire detail folder and just back it up. Just throw it onto a USB drive, and you've backed up everything. Back up the entire folder. Boom. You just backed up your entire detail library. That's obviously a very important thing to back up. Now, in terms of sharing, this is where it gets complicated. You
Mhm.
can set your detail library location in preferences. And so you can, for instance, set a different path other than the land effects details folder. Doesn't have to be there. You could set a Dropbox folder location as an example. And that Dropbox folder location, of course, could be shared among other firms that you're working with, or consultants you're working with. So you could have separate land effects installations, both pointing to this one detail library location. So that's depending on what you're trying to share. Are you trying to share the entire library or just a section of the library? So that's where it gets a little nuanced. And so, the better answer, of course, is if you give us more details on exactly what you're trying to do, we can tell you the more exact thing. Are you trying to share just the details for one project? Are you trying to have a system for how do you back up the details once a job is done? Are you trying to move back and forth between a consultant and someone else? All these different scenarios, of course, are wildly different answers. So that would be that one. But I think that's probably a good one for now. If you want to get back into another couple things, Amanda, and I'll get another couple questions ready for you.
Well, I did just actually see a question that I thought might be a good one to explore. Mason asked if we accidentally
Oh,
delete a custom detail from our project detail folder, is there a backup file location to retrieve that detail?
good one.
And
That is a great question. Oh my gosh.
yeah, that's fantastic. So when you delete a detail in here, let's actually, yeah, let's delete this guy. At am I gonna delete this one? I'm gonna delete a brand new one. Let me go units and architectural inches. Okay, just in here. So I go into there and I am gonna draw a box. Bam. And I'm gonna put a detail around it. Imperial, okay. E. Oh, no, too big. Let's go down. WWW. There we go. And bam. And if you don't know what I'm doing there, this is the fast way to do details. I'm using the keyboard commands down here. Tap K, and I was going between Q and E for larger and smaller scale. That way you don't even need to try and figure out the right scale at the beginning. You can just take what you have drawn and fit a detail frame around it. I'm going to say okay, and then we're just going to place that down. There's my awesome detail. That is going to be incorrect, so I'm going to delete it after. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to save details, select, test, save. Okay, there we go. So I've got that guy. I don't need him anymore, but I'm just going to go back over to here and go into my Explorer. And you can see that detail now if I go over into my P folder and ask, there it is right there, that O2 detail with its SLD and XML. And if I go in and grab it, projects, there we go, ask us anything, and test, and right click and delete from here, yes, it's gone. It does actually, it deletes the file, it deletes the SLD and the XML, it is gone. It does not create a, we do not automatically create a backup of this anywhere. So the answer to your question, Mason, is that since this land effects, this details folder, it literally can be anywhere. It doesn't even need to be where the land effects folder is, but even, it's the same with the land effects folder, the same advice with the land effects folder. You should be backing up the server of wherever these are stored so that as these details get created, it's actually your IT system that is backing up the physical files in your drive. And so if I were to say be on Dropbox, for instance, for this detail library, and I deleted it and it deleted this instance here, Dropbox does actually have some built-in capabilities of being able to restore deleted items or revert to a past version of the file, because that can happen too, right? Somebody could go into one, edit one of these details and completely mess it up inappropriately because they didn't go through the trainer, they don't understand the consequences of that kind of action, didn't talk to anybody, that sort of thing. But that backup system in your server would be able to allow you to go back in history to that previous version of that DWG in here. So it isn't actually a backup system in LandFX at all. This is the backup system that you would put on your shared online folder or your actual server in your office. And Jer actually did a fantastic hardware recommendations webinar just a few weeks ago. It's on our website right now, where he actually went step by step through his suggestions on how to set up those backups for the whole land effects folders, including the details folder. Jared, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Since you're way
Nope,
more
nope.
of an expert on it than I am.
Oh no! You know what? That was great. But in fact, I would add. There's two more things I would add. One is like in this case, the detail actually should be in your recycle bin.
Oh, that's
Um,
true. Okay.
so that's also something, if when it is an actual, physical computer drive like this. Now, if it was on a Dropbox folder location, that I'm not necessarily sure of, but I believe most, if another case for Dropbox or shared online folders, that should have an ability to access deleted files through their interface as well. But also, then one last point is if the detail was ever placed onto a sheet, that gives you another backup level. And so this is a very, very important point.
Mhm.
So much for, first of all, it means it kind of flips the script on details a little, in that traditionally you don't really assemble the detail sheet until the very, very end. But with land effects, there is a benefit to just as you have literally just the most basic prototype of the detail. It's not even finished. It hasn't been dimensioned, it hasn't been hatched. I mean, just the very, very basic concept of a detail. Place that in onto a sheet because you get a backup level because the detail is placed as a block. So if the source detail is ever missing, you can W block out that detail block from the sheet. So you could lose your entire detail library, as an example. Brand new install. Where are all my details? They're all gone. We get this tech support issue all the time because it does happen. People go, I never backed up my Land Effects folder because I'm silly goose. What do? I have a new install. All my details are gone. Well, it's not the end of the world. You're going to start W blocking them out of your detail sheets. So at least there is a copy. And the reason why that's very important and why I'm not saying this is the end of the world is remember, if you XREFed all your details in, once the source is gone, you're completely out of luck. It is a key architecture of our detail system that they're inserted as blocks because expressly it gives you that additional backup level.
Yeah, and just going through and opening that up. So once you open this up and zoom extents, there it is. So like this still had probably has the data on it. I can actually if I were to do this, I'd probably place I should place the template around it brand new, right? Because I'm worried that yeah, these are already attributes. So I would go ahead and delete that or move it
To
to
be
the
to be
side.
safe, it should resave fine, but you're right. I mean, and that also what Amanda's showing is a classic conundrum with our detail system that also is. Remember, we're all sitting here talking about the new detail system we're coming around the corner is going to separate that template out to a separate file. Um, and so, we do still have the current system as designed, and this is the one dilemma is, oh, I have this detail, something's wrong with it, or I moved it from another project or this or that, or I want to change the scale. And anyway, it's a very, very common thing with our detail system. You know what? Just delete the template and place a new template.
Yeah.
It's a very, very standard troubleshooting act, and obviously is a lot cleaner because yeah, just to be totally safe, I don't want any of that gunk that was saved with it previously. Just simply place a new template. And so you can also see why we're so excited about our new under construction system, where we're finally basically addressing this correctly, which is all there really should be here is just that polyline outer rectangle. That's it. And that whole
Yeah.
template, the template will only be added when you place the detail.
So we've actually been talking and I think maybe teasing a little bit too much on the future our future plans. We were going to
Oh,
do
I
it
know.
more at the end. And you know what? I can't wait. I can't wait. I'm
Oh,
going to
I know
pull up
because
that slide.
it's killing me because it's like
It's
we're working on it on a daily basis, and yeah, anyway, but yeah, but I hope it shows that like it's still absolutely the system works great now, but of course we're always going to be working to improve it, and at times you'll get this where we're barely a few months away from something really, really cool, and it's really hard to hold it in when we do a webinar like this.
Yeah, and we work so long and hard on these that and sometimes they take a little bit longer because we want it to be perfect when we get it out to you guys. And we want to put it through its paces and really think through how is everything going to work so it's the most intuitive process for everybody. So here are the envisioned future of where all of our ideas are coming from, where the design effects license, and all of the detail tools inside of it are going. So the big one is we don't just want the detail tools in Revit. We want the same detail library in Revit. We want it to be we want you to be able to go seamlessly back and forth between AutoCAD and Revit. And we also want that if you are starting in Revit and you used land effects and all of the details in CAD before, AutoCAD before, that when you get into Revit, you don't have to recreate your whole library. You will have all of the details you saved before and be able to place them in Revit as real details in Revit that you can then reference on all of your pages and use the Revit tools with it. It will also have the ability to coordinate, if you prefer in Revit, to draft your details in AutoCAD and then place in Revit afterwards. It will have a live coordination with say, a Revit section cut in there so that you can then use all the tools in Land Effects to place annotations and hatches and all of that a little bit more easily with more familiarity, and then be able to place that detail in Revit and have it auto update with any changes to that section. So that's one of the big things that it's still, it's going through, it's getting there. We're getting closer and closer to it. The thing that we want that to lead to, and I've been talking to quite a few multidisciplinary firms, especially when we went to Autodesk University last year, with their BIM managers, kind of asking the question, if you are in a multidisciplinary firm with landscape architects and engineers, and the landscape architects are using the design effects, the detail tools, but the engineers aren't. And so we're asking the question, why aren't they? What is missing in it that it needs to have for them to also find it to be as useful as you guys are? And sometimes it's turning out that might just be a simple conversation we need to have. Like it is already, in most cases, it is actually already ex perfect for them. And, it comes down to cost, but then we have that design effects license that is a, steeply reduced cost for the subscription, and it only includes the detail tools, but that's all they really need right now. Um, so that's an option that we're looking at, but then once we get into Revit, of course, we want the architects in the office to be using that as well. At least make sure the architects find value in the detail tools as well. We are already working on a more full default library of detail resources. A big question I always get is, hey, I look at one of your any one of the CSI folders and it's empty. There's nothing in there. And I'm like, yes, yes, we need to make more details in there. We are actually in the middle of it right now. So we've hired a few new content team members that are actively working on getting all of those in. The first thing that we had them working on was all of those metric details. And that's also going to lead to conversations that we're having with manufacturers of making sure that when they place a manufacturer object in the reference note, site amenities, or areas for pavers and stuff like that, that we are also saving in their detail library so that if you pick a certain bench, it's so easy to grab the detail of that bench and then make a copy and then change it how you need it for your site. But all right in there, linked to your preference set, style standards for text and layer names and line weights and all of that. That's also going to lead to expanded detail builder blocks. Like, one thing we would like in there is more little blocks that you can use to plug and play and build up a detail. But I mean, we would like to have more things in there like say unilock retaining wall blocks in profile view that you can use to build the retaining wall cross section detail that you want to create. And maybe that could lead into migrating those detail builder blocks into a 3D program as well, so that you could build it in SketchUp or Revit and then link it back to the detail system. That like these are the kinds of ideas. And then the last one that is really a pie in the sky and kind of something that I've been thinking about a lot. Um, I feel like we have a lot, as landscape architects, we have a lot of institutional knowledge that is buried in a room, in an office, and never sees the light of day again. And uh, I feel like we do not share our knowledge amongst professionals as much as other design professionals do. So one thing that we have been considering is how would we approach that? How would we uh make it so that people would want to share details, the construction details that are in, I don't know, 1970s to 90s paper plans in a storeroom in the basement of the office. How do we get those to see the light of day again? And how do we encourage people to share those so that uh, people aren't going into the dark, reinventing the wheel on every retaining wall that ever gets built? How do we share that knowledge? And I don't know if anybody has any idea, like if we were to create some sort of database that you could upload details to share with others, what would make you want to do that? Would you just do that because you want to advance the profession? Is there anything that would stop you from wanting to do that, or your office doing such a thing? Do you want it to be kind of a swap system? Would that like, I don't know if anybody has any ideas on how to make that sort of idea uh more palatable. I would love to hear it because it's definitely something bouncing around in our heads. Um,
Yeah, right.
yeah,
Because I
Jared, did you have
we,
any?
yeah, well, like we've talked about, we've kind of brainstormed what if it's like a point system, like for every detail you upload to the sharing locker, you can download three or something like that, right? And so, maybe is it something like that? Because do we try to incentivize you sharing your details in order to access from this shared detail library? We're just not sure. We're literally not sure the best way to do it because clearly it's just not one of those things, the direct business plan, right? It's not, or do you do that? It's $1 just there. It's $1 per detail you download. We could go that route. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, but exactly. Along those lines, of these cool new features. If I may, though, I think it rolls right in. We've got two really, really good questions from Patrick.
Okay.
Clearly a detail power user. Um, so first, really, really great idea. Something we've talked about a lot in the Detail Explorer. And we do have a lot of people who are basically asking the same thing. So if you want to pull up the Detail Explorer, like as an example, how do I set up some sort of sharing system with a consultant or a
Mm,
partner or somebody else? And he worded it really well, which is exactly how we're trying to conceive of it, is basically, can you kind of import or designate or create in some fashion a folder in here and say this folder is located over here on this Dropbox drive, right? So you can have just that one folder. So maybe like under projects, there's a subfolder there that you somehow say, okay, I want to add a linked folder as an example of what it might be. Okay, I'm adding a linked folder, and then boom, it's that shared location that now multiple people can be accessing. That's vaguely how we understand it should work. And then, of course, the devil's in the details. How the heck do you pull that off? Right?
Mhm.
So that's a really, really good point, Patrick. And it's absolutely something that we're wrestling with. Currently, the best solution, and it's not ideal in any regard, but it's just the nature of how everything is designed and how to do it in a least error prone fashion, which is also very, very key because as consider this. If you see a folder in there, how do you know that that is the shared folder with four other firms, right? So
Mhm.
that's where the error prone factor comes in, which is extremely key. So currently, the best way to do it is you literally have to have separate land effects installations. And so you have the entire land effects folder is duplicated, and you just simply use a drive mapper to change the drive letter. And by the
Yeah.
drive letter changing, that's more indicative. So I changed the drive letter Q. That's for the Q project that I'm working on with this other firm. And so that's our best solution for that currently.
Yeah, I'm
And
thinking an icon like we do over here in the project organization
exactly. Exactly.
would
And
work
that's what it'd
really
be.
well.
But I mean, well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, in theory, but I think in practice, people would go, what does that mean? And so it has to
Maybe
be,
that's true. I'd have to
yes.
mouse over and yeah.
Because
Okay.
also then, because it's one thing to say, oh, there's an icon, but clearly there need to be permissions for that, right?
Yes.
So how does one set the permissions for just that folder? Where is that set? It's this is the snowball effect of software development. Welcome.
Yeah, and
Um,
if it's a folder all the way down here, how does it then share all of the top level folders?
exactly. So
And
it's
and I
it's
think
it's a
there's a
tricky one.
few yeah, there's a few things where we've been tossing around like how to share things across different support IDs like that and being able to lock down like just share a single project
Exactly.
with
Exactly.
somebody on another support ID. Yep.
It has
Open up
been
that.
asked, it has been asked multiple times, and we're well aware of the request. We're just admittedly struggling a bit with how to possibly pull that off. It is a little bit of a tall order, 100% on our radar. The one that we're aware of is other firms will use these cloud partners, like A2K, I believe, is one, where they set up the entire project server, and then they will also set up the Land Effects installation on that server, which is a cloud server. And so then all these consultants all have to remote in and connect to that cloud server for that project. So everything's there. It's very secure and it gives them that sharing environment. And so it may very well be it needs to be in that sort of a fashion that you're just sort of indicate I'm working on this project, and then everything for that one project it knows, oh, that's over here at this weird bespoke cloud location. Um,
Mhm.
Patrick then had another really, really great question, um, saying how he does maintain different preference sets for different clients, and what's the best way to do that in terms of details. And it'd be great if the details could match. And it does that one gets wildly tricky as well. I'm going to take as an assumed. So I'm going to go through the assumed ones first. If let's just say, right, let's follow this through. Patrick has three different high profile clients, and they all have wildly different CAD standards. Okay, well, one wants simplex for all fonts, one wants Arial for all fonts, and another one has a eighth inch point high Times New Roman or something for all their text. Some really goofy standard, like they're the city of San Diego or something, right? And so they all have these wildly different standards. So of course he's created three different preference sets for each one for each client. So now you have the details that are saved for each. Well, it'd sure be nice if those details are portable. So you don't have to make copies of all these standard details. Now, so I'm going to say the assumed is you have to have the same detail format size. for all three of them. That's not something where we can't magically, obviously you can place a smaller detail in a larger box, of course, but you can't go the other way around. So the format size, you're gonna have to pick basically the smallest, and that's your new standard across all three. Now, in terms of size, size is your biggest enemy. So with text size, the same. If you're trying to make one detail match three different standards, guess what? You're going to have to use the largest text size as the standard across the board. Um, but beyond that, we already change the fonts themselves. So when you insert a detail, it already changes all the text styles to match your current preference set. So that's already there. But what it won't do is change the size of all the text.
Mhm.
That, of course, would be you can't do that. A detail is finely crafted. You can't have all the M text suddenly getting 25% larger, So we can't change the size. The one that is still pending is changing the dim style. We do hope to be able to have the dim style change, but again, it would be just changing the dim style. It wouldn't impact the size and the scale of that dim style. So that's going to be your one you're going to have to get figured out there. But yeah, but to Patrick and to people like Patrick out there, these are great questions. These are great quandaries. You got to send them in to us, and we love getting a good puzzle like that. And so if there's, obviously there's nuances, of course, to his struggle. And, go ahead and let us know those nuances. And it helps us to, at a minimum, kind of plan for the future and see if we can address it. But maybe we'll even be luckier and go, oh, you know what? Here's a really simple workaround.
Mhm. That one was a tough one.
That one is, and these are great, and we're seeing this more and more. I've also heard from people because so many people are using land effects now. We're getting into these sort of land effects to land effects issues. For instance,
Yeah.
I know I have an irrigation designer and that I know of, and he has a problem where everyone he works with uses land effects for the planting plan, but that it's defining all these key land effects things like the names of text styles and dimension styles and things like that. And so he wants to rip out all the land effects settings so that it doesn't impact his irrigation plan. And it's like, oh gosh, that's a very good point, So we gave him a workaround for that. But exactly like Patrick's problem is like, yeah, everyone you work with is already using land effects and they have their own detail libraries. How can we all easily collaborate? Oh, absolutely. What a great idea. I guess we need to engineer something, don't we, Amanda?
Yeah. Yep. It's well, that's our plan for next year in 2025. We've got our lineup to really focus on these sorts of things and try and pick them apart and get them all together into one cohesive new thing. Let's see. I was thinking about another new tool that I don't think I mentioned. I'm going to go back to this metric detail sheet, and you might have noticed, guys, that there are some new buttons up here that maybe you've already played around with, but maybe you haven't. But part of that new place details ability is now the ability to also renumber details. So if I go in here and delete this guy and move him over, I could double click and start renumbering. But if there was a 6 and a 7 and an 8 and a 9 all in here, I could just refresh this. That's now not placed. I now have these details and I can go and renumber. Yes, renumber the details on the current sheet. And that is now 1, 2, 3, 4. So that is also a new ability that was frequently asked of us, and we were so excited to be able to uh, put that in with this new technology. Let's see. Are there any other questions that we could get to in the last few minutes?
There's it's a really good one. Yeah, a lot going on here with Christopher's question, but another really good question, clearly good of a good power user. Um, but basically they're dealing with a lot of DOT agencies, and so they get these DGN files, and so they're basically struggling with converting these DGN details into DWG. And so, from there, I can already tell from reading his two questions that they're just really struggling with this. Understandably, a lot of firms are, because it's like,
Mhm.
where do we even start? And one of the things he's asking is, are there standard layer settings that we recommend? And at least that, sure, we can help you out with the layer settings. As for the nuances of best processes and techniques for converting DGN to DWG, that I'm not going to be able to offer anything because I literally am just, I don't have anything to offer for that. I don't know the best way.
Yep. So right in here, the best way we do actually have a tool to be able to help you build details and maybe take what they have given you once you're able to get it into open up into AutoCAD to put everything on proper layers instead of layer zero or completely gibberish layer names. And over here under save layers and load layers, we actually have it where you can go to load layers and then go to details. And let's go with landscape architecture and say, okay. And that is going to pre-populate your layer properties manager with all of these new layers. So these are the standard layer names that we recommend, having hidden lines or dashed lines uh, at different line weights. And of course, this would all be set up to the CTB file or STB file that you are using. So if you want to change this at all, you can go ahead, go into a brand new file and just use load layers and bring all the layers that you want in a list into there and then rename them and reset them to whatever color you want and then go to save layers. And once you're in there, you can, and saving, you can set up, say, a company standard folder in here and start saving those layer lists that your company uses by default into there so that anybody with land effects installed with your support ID will be able to access that. Or I think it's actually saved to the same land effects folder. So it is land effects folder dependent. That's how I would do that. You can also find in here a lot of other layer standards that we use, including just stuff for drafting blocks and stuff like that. These are actually the same layer standards our content team uses. And then I just wanted to make sure that at the end of we're approaching the end of this webinar, that I wanted to make sure that anybody who has any ideas on some of the future endeavors that we're looking into, I really do want to encourage you to go on up to the help and go to support and open up a ticket and give us your suggestion, like give us your wild idea, but ideally back it up with how you would accomplish it manually. Because usually, as long as we've got manual steps, then we can automate that. And then the other thing that we're probably looking for is we want to talk to more people who are using details in Revit and talk to you about where you are struggling. What are the pain points of that system that you wish land effects could come in and resolve? Um, we definitely want to get your input on that so that whatever tools we end up making over the next year, it's probably not going to be out until 2026 at the earliest. But we will be working on it through 2025. So we want to make sure that we are incorporating what people actually need.
Exactly, and I think I would just add as the immediate one, that was actually one of the very first questions we got was regarding, what will we offer for Revit? And I would just say, well, the one overall thing we're going to offer is the same thing that we offer in CAD, which is that the details are portable. That's the fundamental problem. The vast majority of people, the way they do details manually is they do all the details in model space, right? And they cut different viewports looking at these different details all in model space so that you can, and in a way, it's an okay system because look, I have all the details for one project right there in one model space, one giant model space. That's great, right? But now, how do you move or copy more appropriately? How do you copy one of those details to another job? What a wildly messed up system it is now. So it's like it's good at one thing, it's horrible at, frankly, the more important thing. And so with Revit, that's the same problem. Right now, Revit details are just simply in the one model, and that's where they are. And they're extremely difficult to port to a different project. And so the main thing we're going to do with the Revit plugin is give the portability for details to move job to job. But then I also wanted to mention one very, very last point on Christopher's project with translating a bunch of files. Translating
Mhm.
a bunch of details, you know what that means. You're going to want to use Batchman. So definitely a pitch for Batchman. Batchman is a key component of the detail system with some new integration into the Detail Explorer is planned for it. How exciting is that going to be? But to be able to do things like redefine the text styles for a whole category of details, or update the dim styles, or just do a purge and audit, things like that. All the amazing things that Batchman can do. Um, it was it was literally originally designed to process details. So just know that, and there's plenty more coming, and it's going to be more explicitly integrated into the Detail Explorer. So that'll be exciting too. But you know what? Guess what, Amanda? On that note, I think it's time for us to turn into a pumpkin.
Yep.
Everybody,
I
thank you so much, and have a good weekend. Do you have any last sign off for everybody?
No, I just wanted to thank you all for coming. These were such amazing questions. I'm always floored by the great questions you guys come up with during these Ask Us Anythings. I'm so glad we do them.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.